Welcome. Welcome everybody to our first conversation around Yes, You Can Innovate and the 6 I's of innovation. So I'd love to, as people are coming in right now, before I introduce our guest today, Stephen Filby, I'd love to just orientate people to StreamYard a little if you're not familiar with it. There should be a chat function that you can actually write in any comments or questions. I can see some things coming in now from Michael. Hi, Michael. And hi, Keisha and Siru. That's fantastic. If you can let us know where you're actually coming in from, that would be fantastic. There is also a little private chat function too. So people will be streaming in through different channels. Some through Facebook, some through LinkedIn Live, some people through YouTube maybe, and also people coming in through the registration as well. So I can see David, thank you, calling from a cafe in Hong Kong. Fantastic. And Bluey Wong, Charmaine, also coming in from Hong Kong. Adam, hi there, all the way from Singapore. I'm actually in Lisbon. And our guest here is Stephen is in Hong Kong. So lots of people from all over the world coming in. Andrew Stanton, hi Andrew, coming in from London. Jacob from Hong Kong. Gina from Munich. Hello Gina, fantastic, wonderful. Okay, so I think everybody's got the hang of it. And as we come through, and we'll have some time for questions and answers as well. So if you've got questions as we go through the session, then please do write them in and we will endeavour to answer them, won't we, Stephen?
We'll give it our best.
Okay, so let's kick off then. So my first conversation is with Stephen Filby. Stephen is the head of talent and learning at the Hong Kong Jockey Club. And he has worked in HR and talent roles for over 25 years in a diverse range of organisations, from startups to large multinational organisations, predominantly in the high-tech industry with companies such as eBay, PayPal, as well as fast-moving consumer goods such as Edgewell. So Stephen has lots and lots of experience. And I actually met Stephen, I don't want to say how many years ago, Stephen, but I think it was back in the early 2000s in Cranfield School of Management at a strategic HR conference. I think I was speaking at it, and that's how we met. So we've been in connection with each other since then. So what we're going to do today is we're actually going to use the 6 I's of innovation, which I'll show you in a while as well, to explore some of Stephen's leadership journey and what he sees as the challenges, or some of the challenges, for talent directors in building hybrid workforces, because that's the world we're all very much now steeped in. But not just hybrid workforces, but hybrid workforces that can innovate together across geographies and time zones and multiple locations and all the complexity of global work, particularly through that COVID-19 pandemic, which, thankfully for in terms of the depth of what we were in is behind us, hopefully now. So, Stephen, I'd like to just pass over to you and ask you to intro yourself, say a little bit about your journey.
Well, hello everyone. Good evening, good morning, depending on where you are in the world. Definitely good morning to you, Natalie. Welcome to my sunny home office in Happy Valley in Hong Kong Island. And I apologise if I look a bit stripy, it's my blinds and there's not really much I can do about them. But Natalie, well, you actually gave a really good job of introducing me and didn't leave me a lot to say. But what I will say is, yes, we met at Cranfield Business School when you were representing a very interesting assessment tool at the time called the SBM. And actually one of my big mysteries in life is why the SBM didn't really take off more, because it was such an innovative tool, for want of a better expression. But that's where we met, and we kind of bonded with our love and passion, shall we say, for innovation. I was working for a business travel company at the time that was taken over by American Express. But then I moved into the high-tech industry of Expedia, PayPal, eBay, and startups in various talent management roles, L&D roles, but also HR generalist roles. When I was at the startup, I was the chief HR officer, so I've experienced all different roles. Actually, I started my career in sales, actually, and I think that was a great foundation for moving into HR, because sales, customer focus, finding out needs, influencing, all really good stuff for the HR part of the world as well. But it was really interesting, actually. I'll tell you the most interesting thing I found working in high technology is how innovative they were externally and with the products and with the consumer interfacing platforms, etc. But internally, a big lack of innovation, and in some ways, quite far behind best practice. And so that was what made working in HR in the high-tech industry so interesting, because it was helping them catch up internally, because you needed that innovation to be able to grow your talent, fine-tune the processes so the business could grow at scale and so rapidly. If not, you were finding actually that HR was holding up the whole business growth. So that was really interesting. And then I moved to consumer goods, which is my most recent move. I wanted to try a completely different industry after working in high tech for so long. So joined Edgewell in consumer goods, I think it was about 6 years ago now. So moved to Hong Kong at the time, and pretty soon after there was the protest started, and then of course COVID started. So lots of work, although I had a global role at Edgewell, but lots of work for Hong Kong, but also globally, to get Edgewell through the pandemic. Because particularly being a manufacturing organization, because we made razors, which as you can see I haven't used today, and sun creams and wet run hand wipes. So, manufacturing, still today, you can't really do fully remote. You have to have people there. So that put up a whole, extra set of challenges, if you like. But yeah, more recently, 8 months ago, I moved to the Hong Kong Jockey Club. Again, I felt like something completely different. And the Hong Kong Jockey Club is a completely unique organization. But I think what attracted me to about it is there's so much for the community here. I think 96% of all profits from the Hong Kong Jockey Club, we plow back into the Hong Kong community. So it's a great place to be, focusing on the talent management and learning in a very challenging environment. It's challenging for us all at the moment, wherever we are in the world, because there's a big shortage of talent. But we do have a bit of a double whammy in Hong Kong, because not only do we face the same challenges that the rest of you do in the rest of the world, but also we do have a challenge with lots of people leaving Hong Kong at the moment, although we are seeing the first stages of that going around full circle and people starting to come back. But yeah, very interesting role, a wonderful company to work for, where I have a wonderful team. So I feel very lucky to be here.
Great. Wow, what a career journey, a very innovative career journey as well, Stephen. All the different roles you've chosen, the perspectives that you have, which are fantastic. And I just want to touch on that one that you talked about, sort of, the external perception of a lot of organizations is that they're very innovative, in the marketplace and with the goods and the services that they create for their customers, but internally there can be a lot of requirement for innovative ways of working, or what I call sort of organizational innovation, that actually will support the delivery and the growth, and particularly the talent development of people internally to be able to deliver on those the customer service and products, etc. So that's, I think, a really, really interesting segue for us to now sort of explore a little bit through the 6 I's of innovation. So let me just add that to the stream, and everyone hopefully can see the 6 I's here. So what I'd like to do is just very briefly take people through it at a very top level, and then Stephen, if I could just ask you to sort of comment on it from your perspective around some of the challenges, particularly in building hybrid workforces that can innovate effectively together. That would be really useful. So let me just very, very briefly just touch on it then. So we've got these 6 I's of innovation. Identify, which is all about when we come up with new opportunities. We see things that are changing in our environment, and all of us have been very much in that space, particularly over the last couple of years, where a lot of change, a lot of new opportunities are emerging. Ignite is when we generate new ideas and new solutions for opportunities or for problems or for challenges. Investigate is the testing, the prototyping, the validating of those ideas to see if they're going to be useful, not just novel. Invest is when we put the time, resource, the people behind an idea to make it happen. It's often what I call the graveyard of ideas. Sadly, it's where a lot of our ideas do get stuck. Implement is the hard work of innovation. It's when we actually try to get those ideas out into the world. And it's only really at this point that we create value, that we actually innovate. And then improve is where we look at our ideas and see how we can optimize and leverage them. And of course, I've explained it very quickly in a clockwise direction, but the 6 I's is an agile model. We move backwards and forwards. We start at different points. And we also move, hopefully, across the center, which is really, really important. Purpose. Why are we trying to innovate in the first place? What are we trying to create? What value are we trying to create? And you can see there are 2 little triangles linking purpose to each of the I's. Now, the inner triangle represents culture or environment. We need to be able to build strong cultural environments that can support innovative ways of working, just as we were just commenting on previously, and also the processes to support innovation. Otherwise, what happens? We may have too many ideas floating around in Ignite, not enough traction in implementation, not enough investment going on in new ideas, for example. So that's very, very top level. Stephen, any comments from you, particularly around the challenges from a talent perspective?
Yeah, well, I'm thinking particularly around the talent perspective and hybrid working, which of course we were really forced into in the pandemic. When I was at Edgewell, now we were already thinking that we wanted to have a big focus on innovation because we'd put together a new culture at Edgewell and a new purpose statement, which is we make useful things joyful. So very clear, and we're talking here about razors and sun cream. We need to make our products more useful and joyful than the competitor. So a very clear purpose there. And of course, the only way we were going to achieve that is by being innovative. If not, we weren't going to be ahead of the competitors if we were just continually following them or playing catch up. So I think that's what attracted us to the 6I model, is because purpose there is in the middle. And it can be very easy when you're being innovative to go off on a bit of a tangent and not be focused on the purpose. But with the 6I, because you're always focused on the purpose, we can see it's in the middle there. It's less easy to kind of go off on a sidetrack and move away from that and come up with something very innovative and creative, but something that doesn't actually link to the purpose. Yeah.
Excellent. Great. And what about the sort of the in terms of helping, or the challenges that people were coming up against in terms of being able to innovate together? Were there very specific challenges that you heard a lot? Because obviously, some people were used to remote working already, had worked in sort of global roles and were used to that. But other people, it was a huge change for them not going into offices. And how did that affect their ability to be innovative and to be able to work innovatively together?
Well, it's interesting because I was actually put in charge of the hybrid project at Edgewell and thinking, I don't know whether this, my background is really hybrid working. Then I realized nobody's is, because we've been really forced into it in the COVID environment. So I was happy to take it on, but it's not like a normal thing where you start looking at best practice because there was very little around. And so actually use the 6I process to identify what the issues were with hybrid working. We come up with lots, but focusing on the leadership development side of things, we really felt that leaders needed skill development, upskilling in 3 areas in particular. One was being empathetic, particularly when virtual, and helping people at a time where empathy was really important to their health. And actually, number 2 was enabling our leaders to have a bigger focus on wellness of our employees, or teammates, as they're called at Edgewell. But the other big thing was to be able to innovate. So, as I said, before even the pandemic, Edgewell had a purpose where we needed to be innovative. But then we went into the pandemic, and the feedback we were getting from leaders is they were struggling to be innovative virtually. And some of them actually said to us, I can't be innovative or I can't be creative because, I can't get my team around a whiteboard. Which was quite scary, really, because, we need to be better at innovation in Edgewell than other companies to be a step ahead. So we had a big program where we wanted to upskill leaders, and we had to start small because we had 900 leaders. So we actually started off with 90-minute webinars where we covered those 3 skills. And the tool we wanted to give them for innovation was the 6 I's. Now, one of the great things about the 6 I's is even if you only have a 20-minute session on it, you still get something out of it and actually can leverage it. Even if it's just remembering the 6 I's and remembering to be focused on the purpose, that's a step ahead. That's a better skill than you would have had before. But then obviously we wanted to build on that. So what we did is we put together a workbook for being innovative in a hybrid situation. Actually, most of the tools would apply to an in-person situation, but we also had a focus on how you could be innovative hybrid. And what it seemed to be the thing that people were most struggling with, if we looked at the 6 I model, was Ignite. That kind of brainstorming. They were so used to brainstorming, putting post-it ups or writing on flip charts and shouting things out. They couldn't see how to do that if they're all on a Zoom call, or some of them are on a Zoom call. Now, of course, most of us know now that we can use Microsoft Whiteboard and there's Mural and things like that, but that's new to a lot of people. So we put together a really good workbook on how to innovate in a hybrid environment. And that followed the structure of the 6 I's. And each of the 6 I's, we gave tools. Some of them, would be just as useful virtual as in person. Some of them were better for virtual, but we made sure we covered tools and techniques for the 6 I's that you could leverage in a virtual or hybrid situation. Because, it was a bit of concern when we got that feedback from some of our leaders, just saying, oh, well, I haven't been able to be innovative for the last year because I've been virtual. Was obviously a key priority for us to focus on changing that really mindset, but also giving people the skills to do it.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point there too, isn't it? Because I think for a lot of people, they do still equate innovativeness or being innovative with Ignite. And with the generation of ideas in terms of the creative aspect, coming up with an idea. And it's quite interesting then, sort of unpacking it to say, well, to be innovative is far more than that, but we still need to create that environment where Ignite can flourish. That little triangle of culture and environment that can support it, and the processes and the tools to enable it to happen. And I always say, thank God for things like Mural that happen, I was able to use as a professional trainer, speaker, facilitator, through COVID, that enabled, collaboration, people to come together, to be able to brainstorm together, to write, to think together in one space, even though they were all in different spaces. So it's so important for us to have different sort of enablers, whether we're trying to do stuff on our own or we're working in teams together, and wherever we are. So great to know that toolkit and the approach has really helped Edgewell during that time, Stephen. Just on this before we look at the profile side of things.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you're right about a lot of people see innovation the same as creativity, which is kind of the ignite stage. So, and also people say, "Oh, I'm very creative," meaning they're very strong on the ignite side. And of course, the other interesting part of the 6 Eyes is realizing that everybody, whatever their strength, has a role to play in innovation. And if you're going to be really good at it, you probably need people in all of those different eyes. So the assessment tool could be quite useful for that. But I think, yeah, there is a big kind of misunderstanding with a lot of people that creativity is the same as innovation. But it isn't innovation unless it gets implemented, as you say, and that hard work is done.
Absolutely. Great. Well, I think that's a great segue, Stephen, to talk about the profile. So let me just add your results to the stream. And for those of you looking in now, hopefully you can see a graph. Let me explain it briefly, and then Stephen, it'd be great to hear some of your thoughts or comments on it. So one of the things that when I invented the 6 Eyes that I saw was sort of really needed was to help to democratize. I call it sort of to democratize innovativeness, to be innovative. That being innovative isn't just to be creative. We can be great implementers and be innovative. You know, we can be great improvers and be innovative. And that everybody has a role to play. And we have different strengths that we bring, different ways of contributing our skill sets. So we created this assessment tool, and it's strengths-based and it's skill-based. So it's not a personality instrument. It's not a psychological or motivational tool, although motivation can affect our skills. But I think we all know that sometimes we are very good at things we don't like doing too. So it's not a direct correlation with skill and motivation. But what it does is it measures people's self-perception. So it's a self-perception measure of how strong you feel you are at different skills. So across the horizontal axis, you can see the different eyes, and then you've got on the vertical axis, you've got 2 measurements. On the left-hand side, we have 0 to 100, and this is a strength indicator. So the degree to which you feel you're strong at certain skills that are associated with the different aspects of the journey of innovation. And on the right-hand side, you have an importance measure of 0 to 10. So just to briefly explain how this is measured, the darker colours are what we call a normed score. So it's normed against the population of other people that have also answered the questionnaire. That makes it robust and reliable as an instrument. And so whatever little decile you're in is that particular normed group. And then the lighter colour bar is an indicator of how important are these skills to you right now in your job. So it gives you a little bit of a gap analysis between what you consider your strengths to be and also what you consider to be really important. And so sometimes you might be overplaying a strength. Sometimes you might actually need to think, well, who can I collaborate with in order to help to close the gap? It doesn't mean necessarily that you have to be good at everything. The whole intention of this is that we team, that we collaborate, that we work with other people who consider themselves stronger on certain skills. So, Stephen, tell us a little bit about you through your results on the 6 Eyes.
Yes, well, these are my results, and I guess probably a positive thing is I certainly see the importance of all the 6 Eyes. That's all showing in terms of my perceived importance on the high side. Actually, I do think that's one of the benefits of getting old. Not that I had the 6 Eyes right at the beginning of my career, but I've learned through making mistakes, as in not focusing on implementing something or not going back and continually improving things, that things aren't working out. So I think I've learned that the hard way. But when you actually think of my perceived strengths, yes, I have an opportunity in implement and improve. So in implement, at the moment, I've got a great team with a lot of people with a lot of strengths. So I can leverage people's strengths, and hopefully they leverage me as well when they need my strengths on the different stages of the 6 Eyes. Improve, I've made a more conscious effort on that in terms of whenever I've implemented something, always diarising it to go back and review. And there's a little technique that we actually introduced in Edgewell, and it's a really good technique, which is called the retro. Very simple. This is the process where at the end of a project, maybe 3 months after, you just ask what's going well, what's not going so well, and what can we do differently to improve going forward. So I think that's been more developing a habit, whereas implement, because I don't have a strong passion for it. I tend to leverage other people's strengths, but also I need to be, sometimes I'm responsible for the whole of these 6 Eyes and initiating and implementing something myself. So then I just need to make that constant effort to be aware and make sure I'm focusing enough and scheduling enough on my time so something is implemented well.
Excellent. Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I'm very similar on the improve one. I think I'm in the 0 to 10 decile on improve, and I'm high on ignite. And it's an interesting one that sometimes we can completely miss it because we're so eager to get on with the next thing. And because our skills are, say, in another area, we are confident. We're confident in that space, and so we spend more time in that space doing that. And so I think it really does help us to see the blind spots. And when we have other teammates who are really good at collaborating with us, they can sort of say, hey, Steve and Natalie, let's just stop for a minute and take a breath and think about how we can improve this, how we can do things differently. So I think that's a really great observation. And the whole point is that we learn to see our blind spots. We grow in self-awareness, and we collaborate more effectively with other people so that we're always playing to each other's strengths. So that's the whole intention really of the 6 Eyes profile. And I wonder, Stephen, do you have any comments just from a leadership development perspective? I know you said that, being a leader, sometimes, we've got to look over the top. We've got to be like in the helicopter, haven't we? Sort of seeing all of the eyes, even though our strengths are maybe in 1 or 2 particular areas. But any other thoughts just from sort of talent development, leadership development around the profile?
Yeah, I just think, using this structure, you can make a very conscious approach, whatever your strengths are, of making sure you allocate areas. And as long as you're conscious with that and you're giving, the time frames that each of these different stages need and the resources that they need, rather than spending too much time in your preference area, then that's a good way forward. And I think really there's 2 sides to it. One is if you're a team leader, being aware of which a high-performing team is, leveraging people's strengths to take into account people's development needs, and maybe using some of those people's with strengths to help develop some of those people in the development needs in the same areas. But also, flexing your style. We can't always stay in one area just because it's our comfort zone and it's what we're enjoying. We have to stretch ourselves and make sure we cover all the necessary things. I mean, 6 Eyes is one thing, but there's, like Myers-Briggs, the decision making. And I think being aware of any gaps in this, but then being very mindful going forward is a big help. And then actually what does happen over time is, you develop new habits, and you don't even need to become consciously aware of it anymore. You've changed something that was perhaps a development need into a new habit.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I often liken it to sort of the relay race as well. When you're in a run, in a race, you've got the baton in your hand, and you're often having to then pass that baton on to somebody else. who then takes that idea forward, who has a lot stronger strengths in that particular area. And I think that it's, oftentimes when we can think about ourselves in relationship to our strengths, we can sometimes, it's not about saying, well, I'm not an investigator, therefore I'm not going to investigate. It's actually, even more so, you need to find someone that's going to help you or develop some skills there that at least can cover the basis so that you can, sort of think more critically about what you're trying to do as well. And we've used the model in a lot of ways, but one of the things that you're touching on too is that when you have people go through the profile, they can then actually pinpoint what areas they want to develop on. Do they want to develop new skills? And you can actually then measure, you can measure that over time to see, are people starting to grow in their own confidence? So that's fantastic observations from you, Stephen. Okay, what I'd like to do now is just to sort of see, are there any questions from anybody listening in? I can see there's a couple of comments. We have David there saying the challenge is getting some organisations to eat the food they cook. I like that. That's an interesting one, David. And some observations, but anything that anybody would like to ask Stephen or myself, then please do pop it in the chat or in the comment box, and we can endeavour to answer that. And while you're having a think, Stephen, what sort of takeaways, what sort of things, if you were to really focus on giving people a couple of things to take out of today's session, any specific things you'd like to highlight?
Well, maybe just continuing to look at this profile, because a couple of things here. We all know that diversity is important. So whenever we're recruiting people for our teams or for other teams, if you're in talent acquisition, just be really aware of recruiting people that are like you. And it can be on all sorts of dimensions. So using the 6 I's as an example, great candidate, full of ideas. Well, if your rest of the team are already full of ideas, maybe it'd be better for you to have somebody who can actually implement them. So it's a big danger there. And I always push back on hiring managers that say, oh, my intuition tells me this, because I always think intuition could be an unconscious bias that you're not even aware of. But yes, I think a takeaway I'd like to say to everyone, if you feel that your organization would benefit from more innovation, just find somewhere to start, whether it's having the conversations, just starting in small ways, piloting things, and evaluating them and just spreading the word that way. You can start very small. Like when we started with the 6i, it was more or less you had a 20-minute slot in a session, and it grew from there. So just get started, I think, is the key takeaway. And I think the other one is not necessarily completely related to the 6 I's, but just the importance of human leadership. I think in the hybrid workplace and with all the stresses and strains of the world, we had the pandemic. Now we're having all the tensions around Ukraine and other things. It's a very difficult place for people to be. And we know that there isn't a strict divide between home life and work life. So we do need to be human leaders. And I quite like the Gartner model for human leadership, which is saying that it's empathy plus authenticity plus adaptivity. That, along with leading with purpose, I think could be very impactful in today's times.
Yeah, fantastic. I like that too. That's a great definition. I've had a couple of questions come up, Stephen, so I'm going to put them on the screen. So this is from David. Stephen, there often needs to be a balance between what makes an organisation strong and the need to innovate, famously called the innovator's dilemma. What is your experiencing in managing this challenge? Any thoughts on that?
Yes, I mean, there's different ways it can be managed. I guess there's no one size fits all. but a lot of organizations split off a separate like incubation lab, or Google have done, I forget what they call it now, like moonshots or whatever, where they have a separate part of the organization that really is focusing on finding the next big thing. One example is, I think Microsoft might have found the next big thing with ChatGPT. I've been playing with that over the weekend and completely blown away with it. And it could literally wipe out Google because it is so much better than Google search. So, if you don't innovate and stay where you are now, then your other organizations are, and you're going to die. So with innovation, there's both a burning platform and a brighter future. And you just got a way to balance that challenge, which, whether it's a separate part of the organization, or maybe you have hackathons, maybe you have employee suggestions where you're encouraging them to be innovative, but just make sure you have an outlet, an opportunity for that, as well as the deep focus that you want on your key areas of strength. Is different for different organizations, and I've seen it done in different days. In high tech, it is a lot of like, we've set up separate organizations that very much focus on innovation. But in Edgewell, it was much more integrated across the organization, I'd say.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point. There are so many different types of models, but when you're wanting to really affect the sort of the mothership, if you like, the big organization, is really about how you start to inculcate innovative ways of working in the processes, in the culture and the systems of the organization, so that everyday innovation is occurring as much as the horizon through.
It's a culture. And the danger is, like high tech, they're having these things which is very much product focused, and they're ignoring the opportunities they have to do with the internal process innovation, and just simplifying things, making things more efficient. So I've done things called process shredders, where we've asked staff to say what is the biggest barrier for them getting their job done, and then they upvote and downvote things, and you get some really key barriers, and then you can be very innovative about either removing those barriers or minimizing them. And that is super helpful.
That's brilliant. I love that. Process shredding, everybody. Let's go and do some process shredding. We've got another question here from Martin. Thanks for sharing your experience. Did you also undertake a collective team view, an aggregated stack chart to understand your team mix? That's the team profile,
Yeah, very much. Well, I'll let you give the details of that, Natalie, as the designer behind it. But absolutely, you can do that. And it's great when you're getting a project team together to kind of understand the different strengths of the project team in the different areas, or use it on a day-to-day team, so people know the strengths and opportunities there, and look for areas of cross-developmental opportunities where one person who's strong in something can help someone that's not. But even allocating a project, so you have maybe more of the igniters up front and more of the implementers in that different stage. There's so many ways to leverage that, but I guess the bottom line is, yes, you can absolutely put together an aggregate view, can't you, Natalie?
Yeah. So Martin, we actually have a team profile where we can aggregate everybody's results and then go into all the detail to see underneath what's actually going on, what people consider collective strengths and challenges in terms of how they innovate together. So there's actually one last one from Gina. So Gina says, I run intrapreneurs boot camps where the self-nominees work on self-selected issues they want to see change. The difficulty, big pats on the back for identifying and investing, but those who could decide position can't do it technically. This is where the innovation lies. That's an interesting observation. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, we are coming to the end, so just a comment for people in terms of if you want to know more, I will be following up with an email, but I am going to be doing a little deep dive, just a 2-hour deep dive, where you'll get a copy of the book and also your own profile, so that you can see what you're like on the 6 I's of innovation. And this will be on March the 21st. I'll send everything in an email to you. And we have like a little discount code for anybody that's been listening in today. So I will send that to you. If not today, then tomorrow. And let us just have I think we've got one more stream from Andrew. One more question here. So if the innovative body of an organization is operating at arm's length, any suggestions on how to align or integrate the output with mainstream operations? Wow, that's a big question, Andrew. Any thoughts, Stephen, on that before we finish?
Yeah, well, just very quickly, because I know we haven't got a lot of time. I think it's about communications and sharing, collaborating across the organization. Something that I found is you can actually get a lot of ideas from other departments, not even necessarily the innovative body. I've learned a lot of ideas that I can leverage in HR and learning from the marketing team. Like instead, this was years ago, I think it's more common practice now, but I realized that like marketing teams can segment clients, HR can segment employees to better incentivize, motivate them, etc. But it's just all about collaborating across the organization. And that stuff doesn't normally happen. Well, sometimes happens by naturally. And the more you can drive a culture for that to happen naturally, the better. If not, see what processes you can put in place to ensure that happens.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. And thanks, Andrew, for your comment there. Okay, we have now come to the end of our 40 minutes together. So I'd just like to thank you, Stephen, for being my guest today, and for everybody that's been listening in, and for all of those who will listen in on the replay. Thank you for being here today, and do feel free to reach out if you'd like to find more. And you can also find us on our website, which is 6-i-innovation.com. So please feel free to reach out, and we can see you on the next one. I plan to do these regularly, so I will let you all know who the next guest will be as well.
I feel very special for being the first guest, Natalie. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, everybody. And have a great rest of your day and rest of your evening, wherever you are in the world. Thank you.
Bye.